Your leader, Kemi Badenoch, has said that these protests that we're going to see at universities today should not be going ahead. We heard from Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, saying that she doesn't want them to go ahead. The Prime Minister wrote it in the paper as well this morning. I think they're going to go ahead. Do you want to see students arrested if they protest today?
Well, I think these protests are an absolute disgrace. This is October the 7th. This is the day in which we should be mourning with those who are mourning. We should be commemorating the appalling terrorist attack by Hamas, and we should be calling with one voice for the remaining hostages to be released as quickly as possible and a peaceful resolution found to this terrible situation. These protests are frankly anti-British, and my message to anyone considering going on them is do not stay at home, show some common decency to your fellow British citizens today. And yes, if anybody on those protests breaks the law by lionising prescribed terrorist organisations like Hamas or Hezbollah or Palestine Action, the police should come down on them like a ton of bricks. They should be arrested. They have no place in British society or on the streets of our country.
You used the phrase as well that the Prime Minister used about them being anti-British. Let me just press you on that, because what can be more British than a group of people going out today, 2 years on from people in Palestine being the subject of a war that's seen at least 60,000 killed. The United Nations call it a genocide. They're going out in solidarity.
I'm going to correct you there. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's not 2 years on from people in Palestine being subject to a war. It's 2 years on from Hamas launching a deadly terrorist attack against the people of Israel. That is what we're remembering today. It is hundreds of innocent Israelis being murdered, raped, and kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. That is the thing we should be thinking about today. Of course, we all want to see peace in the Middle East. This is a terrible situation, but it is the hostages and the victims of the October the 7th terrorist attack that we should be thinking about today.
Can people hold the two things in their heads at once? And do you think that people can, while condemning those attacks, also show solidarity with those within Palestine?
Of course people can, and I've been so clear about this. We all want to see peace in the Middle East. The loss of life is absolutely tragic at the moment, and that's got to come to an end. There is now, fortunately, a peace deal on the table that's been brokered by the United States with allies throughout the Middle East. Hamas, who seem to be holding out, need to come to the table now, agree the final details of that deal, bring the conflict to an end, and above all, get the remaining hostages home to their families and loved ones. That's what we need to see. But look, if anyone thinks that it is British to go out on the streets on a day like today, I'm afraid they are living in a different country to me. That is not the Britain that I want to see. Those people need to show some common decency and stay at home today.
OK. Before we talk a little bit about what you're going to say at conference, I want to play you a bit of yourself, actually, Robert Jenrick, from a recording that's been published in a newspaper this morning. We'll play it. It's about Britishness, and then we'll talk on the other side.
The other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives.
That's you talking about Handsworth as you went there to film a video. Just expand a little more on what you're saying there in that audio, Robert.
Well, look, I don't resolve from those comments. I want to live in a country which is well integrated. I want people to be living side by side. I never want to see segregated or even ghettoised communities. We want people of all skin colours, of all religions, to be living in harmonious, well-integrated communities with our kids growing up alongside each other. And I'm afraid in some parts of the country, there are communities where that just isn't the case. And parts of Handsworth in Birmingham, where I was earlier the year, a place I know quite well growing up in the West Midlands, just don't resemble that. And that makes me very worried. We need to have an honest, open conversation in this country about integration because it hasn't gone well in recent years. You know, in the last 20 years, there's been at least 6 major reports by governments of all political persuasions about this challenge, and yet enough has not been done to try to tackle it. And so the remarks that you just played were me speaking to people in the West Midlands about my genuine concerns for that and how we can begin to resolve it.
Well, there's your genuine concerns, as you say, but you were there for 90 minutes. Now, Andy Street, who was mayor of the West Midlands for 7 years, heard those things and said that you're just flat wrong. He says that the area is integrated. He's a Conservative former Metro mayor as well. So why is he wrong and you right?
Well, I respect Andy, but I disagree with him on this issue. I do know the West Midlands well. I grew up down the road in Wolverhampton. I went to university in Birmingham, so I know the area well myself. And the concern I have in that community and in others across the country, because it's not just about one place, that was an example because I was speaking nearby, is that we're not living in a country which is as well integrated as...
OK, you've used this word integrated as well as the one that I'm interested in.
May I just make this point, if I may? Look, there are real dangers.
Go on.
There are real dangers. If we don't live in a well-integrated community, then this can lead to serious, serious challenges. Look, just the other day here in Manchester, we saw a man who had lived in this country for 30 years, but was clearly not integrated into our society, clearly did not share British values, committing an appalling terrorist attack by going to a synagogue and killing British Jews. That is at the extreme level where failures of integration lead. And that's why we've got to have a debate about this and not have it shut down whenever anyone puts their head above the parapet and talks about it publicly.
I do wonder what integrated means for you, and I wonder how you can judge that a person is integrated by the colour of their skin, being there for 90 minutes.
Well, look, I was very clear that it's not about the colour of your skin or the faith...
You didn't see any white faces, and that's what made you feel like it wasn't integrated.
The point that I was making is we want all people to be living side by side. We can't have particular communities in this country where there's a heavy preponderance of one group or another. We want people to be living in mixed communities, don't we? I mean, I don't know about you, but that's what I want to 100%. See in this country. That's the kind of country I want my kids to be growing up in.
Jenrick,
you know, there's huge strengths in that, but we mustn't have
we don't have loads of time.
growing
some more points.
communities where people are living essentially ghettoised lives. That is a bad place for our country to be in.
It is. And Robert Jenrick, you know that kind of language, I mean, you said you're putting your head above the parapet, but you'll know that kind of language does give support for groups on the far right that don't want to see brown and black people living in this country.
Not.
You know that, don't you?
I tell you, no, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful and ridiculous comment. I tell you what gives rise to extremist views. With all due respect, it's journalists like yourself trying to shut down...
What did I do wrong?
Legitimate
I'm not shutting you down, Rob, but we've been talking about it for at least 5 minutes.
It is, because what you are implying is that you can't say comments like that. And if we live in a country where politicians or members of the public cannot debate whether there is due integration or not, then that does give fuel for extremists. That does give rise to the far right. So you must not take fair and reasonable comments and try and use them to shut down a debate that this country needs to have. We have been having this debate off and on for decades, and every time people try and raise these issues in a fair and reasonable way, with all due respect, journalists like you pop up and try and knock those people down. And that is the reason why we don't live in an integrated country.
It's not my opinion necessarily,
is the reason why,
Robert, because it's also
the reason why
the mayor
terrorist attacks
of the West Midlands said, Andy
because
Street,
people are not stepping up and taking the action that's needed.
Andy Street said that you were wrong as well, but we can move on from that, if you like. Now, you're going to be talking today about changes in the judiciary. You want to get rid of the sentencing council, and you also want to return back to the power of the Lord Chancellor, the power to appoint judges. Is that going to mean that we're going to have like a US-style system where we'll have judges who are political appointees?
No, absolutely not. Look, this is returning to the world as it was before Tony Blair and Gordon Brown changed our constitution, I would argue vandalised our constitution 20 years ago or so. What we want to see is the independence of the judiciary upheld. And that means rooting out those activist judges, the minority of activist judges that we are seeing in our country at the moment, and ensuring the independence can be restored. I'm afraid we've uncovered a small number, but nonetheless a meaningful number of judges who are doing things which give the public rise to think, are they really independent? Let me give you some examples. Judges who are trustees or supporters of Open Borders charities. Judges who've taken to social media to like or retweet posts which suggest that they are supporting changes in the law or whether the government wins or loses cases in the courts. That's not right. That risks the appearance of political activism. And so what I want to do is protect the independence and the respect of the judiciary by returning to the system as it was and ensuring that we weed out those judges who really are politicians rather than independent jurists.
Okay.
And we can ensure that the public confidence in the judicial system is restored once again.
And Robert, Jenrick, I'm sorry to keep you, but just one last question as well to you, because you spoke to our Sam Coach yesterday saying that a pact with reform wasn't a priority. Could it be a priority later? You'll know that Conservative Party members want to see that happen, especially under your leadership.
No, look, what we all want to see is the Conservative Party get back into business, and that means changing the Conservative Party, learning the mistakes of the past, ensuring that we have serious answers to the big challenges facing the country, like getting the economy going again so people can feel better off, or securing our borders and ending the farce of the small boats crisis. And by doing that, make the Conservative Party once again the natural home for small C Conservatives so we can win back the millions of people.
You know, the polls suggest that you would be more popular among members.
No, look, Kemi is our leader. We had a leadership contest a year ago. That was settled, and I'm fully supporting her. I wouldn't be serving in the shadow cabinet if I didn't think that she was the right person to be leading our party and ultimately our country forward in the years ahead.
Robert Jenrick, thank you for your time.